You don't want your employees to have strokes because that's bad. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cognitive Entrepreneur. It is a beautiful day out today, just gorgeous. Just to give you an update on the diet, I am still eating just the strictly ham. It's doing wonders for me cognitively. It's become a little boring for me. It's become a little boring. That and I've started crying a little bit more. And when I cry, it's kind of like I'm crying. I'm crying blood, is what's happening. It has to do with the ham. I can tell. The thing is, I don't want to. I'm not a quitter. Is the thing. I always go towards the end. So I'm going to continue with this ham diet. It has become a little boring, so I have switched it up in that I'm eating half of the time I'm eating just regular ham, and half I'm sort of not cooking the ham. Sort of like sushi, kind of like a paleo diet, in that I'm not cooking the meat. And so it's more back to basics. It's like raw meat. I'm just eating uncooked pig. That's helped a little bit in the boredom. It certainly hasn't helped with my stomach cramps. Those are something else right now. Again, it has just done wonders for my thought process. I feel like I've built muscle mass. I feel like I could just, there's a lot of the times I'm talking to somebody and I keep thinking to myself, I could rip your head off. I could rip you limb from limb. And it actually takes a lot of strength, inner strength inside of me not to do that. I'm hearing a lot of things in my head. Like I'm hearing a lot of like conversations and voices and stuff. And I think that has a lot to do with the ham diet. So again, I can't recommend this more. Go for the uncooked ham diet, just strictly eating uncooked pork. I think it's really going to do wonders for you. It's done wonders for me. So give it a try. Now today I'm going to be talking about a topic that has been a major factor in a lot of these startups and companies I've owned. Employees are a necessary thing for a company. You need to have employees. You need to have, people doing stuff. It's an unfortunate fact of physics. If I could, I wouldn't want to bring all these people into the office all the day. It slows things down. There's conflicting personalities, but it's a fact of life. You need to have employees. A big thing that's going to stop your employees from getting work done is if they start having strokes. When somebody has a stroke, they can't work. They don't get the work done as quick. They can't. They get irritable. They can't multitask and stuff. Things become challenging. That's a big problem for you. I've learned through a lot of trial and error here. A couple years ago, my company actually had the record for the most amount of strokes in an office. We only had about 50 employees. We had about 7 strokes. So we kind of got written up about that. There was a couple articles a few years ago about this phenomena. But this wasn't just limited to this one company that I owned. I've owned several startups and tech companies throughout the years. And this has been a common theme for me. So it is crucial that you are able to keep your stroke count down so that the employees, you still want to get the work done. But if they have a stroke, it's sort of donezo in regards to the efficiency of the office. The problem with an employee having a stroke is that not only does it affect that employee, it affects the other people too, because when that person has a stroke, the other people are like, oh no, somebody said, oh no. And the problem is they start getting sad. And I think a certain level of sadness in the office is crucial. You need a certain level of malaise to hang in your workplace, to have a certain level of just crushing fear. Just to have that sort of hanging, like a low-hanging fog or something in the office, I think is really important in order to increase efficiency, because if people are too energetic about stuff, they might start thinking that, they can leave or something. They can leave the office, that they're capable of getting a different job. You don't want that. So to have a certain level of sadness is important, but stroke sadness, that's a whole different kind. People start looking around like, oh no, am I going to be the next one? Like, there's been 3 this month. Who's going to be the 4th? You don't want that. So what I'm saying is it's crucial to make sure your employees aren't having a bunch of strokes. Now, this doesn't apply to just strokes. There have been, over the years I've been working in this industry, my companies, there's been, a plethora of health conditions that you'll encounter when dealing with employees, whether it's heart attacks, ulcers, brain aneurysms. I've had several leg injuries, serious leg injuries at my offices, which is strange because it's not a very physical job. But there's been some mangled legs in my tech startups. This is just the price you pay for being an entrepreneur, is that sometimes people get their legs mangled. One time, there was a case that I had where an employee lost 3 limbs. They were left with 1 leg after an incident. The thing is, in my office, I like open floor plans. These cubicles are for the birds. You start getting people in cubicles, they start maybe I'll go on the internet and start searching around. You can't look at them. Can't make sure to make sure they're working. If they're in their cubicles, they can do whatever they want. It's like a party in the cubicles. I'm not trying to run a party here. I'm trying to run a tech startup. I'm not parties are for the weekends. Saturday. Saturday evening. The rest is all work for my employees. Definitely Sunday. In those spaces, I like to have heavy tables, just big, long tables made of solid oak and encased in steel, hard steel. So those tables weigh probably, I don't know, 2,000 pounds. Those are big tables. I like them big. I like them heavy. This was an instance where an employee had to get under the table for some reason. The table collapsed. I'll be honest, the legs holding that table up, they're made of plywood. I like the top to be real heavy, but the legs, that's just showing off if you make that sturdy. So yes, the table collapsed on this young man, and he lost 3 limbs. He lost 2 arms and a leg because it was crushed under this gigantic oak table. That was, there was a lot of screaming, a lot of blood. And the problem with that is that it made a lot of people sad. It made a lot of people anxious in the office because they saw a bloodied, 1-legged man screaming in the office. That became an issue for morale in your office. So you want to make sure that doesn't happen. Now, the main thing is to keep people motivated. That way their mind doesn't start wandering. That's the trick. You got to keep their mind laser focused on the mission of your company, because that's the most important thing in the world. As I've told you before, the mission of your company goes above all else. You need to give your employees a purpose in life, and their purpose needs to be the company. Otherwise, they start thinking about other stuff like, oh, my purpose is, family, or oh, my purpose is living, like enjoying life, or all that sort of stuff. No way. They start thinking about that stuff. You're done. You're done as an entrepreneur. For example, a few years ago, I had a company that specialized in giving negative reviews to Lyft and Uber drivers. Because you wouldn't want to give that negative review on the actual app itself, because then the other Lyft drivers will see it and be like, oh, this guy's a real jerk or something. This was an anonymous site that would that would you could give the most horrendous reviews to Lyft and Uber drivers without being called out for who you actually were. I think it was a great startup idea. I had about 30 employees working for me. One thing that helped with that company is that on a daily basis, we would do chants that would encapsulate the company motto. So what was the purpose of this company? It was to show that customers were dissatisfied with a service. So we would have chants 3 times a day, morning, 5 a.m., when people would need to be in the office. My employees come in at 5 a.m. and if they don't, they're donezo. 5 a.m. people come in, start filing into the office. I would stand on this large stage. I usually build a stage in my offices so that I can stand on it when I need to deliver messages to my employees. I would stand on this stage and the employees would watch me as we would engage in this chant. What was the chant? It had to represent the company, right? So it was the reviews of being dissatisfied with Lyft and Uber drivers. The chant was, I'm dissatisfied, I'm dissatisfied, I'm dissatisfied, I'm dissatisfied, I'm dissatisfied. And we would chant that over and over and over for about half an hour. And then they would get to work. Then, at lunch too, when we needed a pickup at around noon, another half hour of the chanting, I'm dissatisfied, I'm dissatisfied. And then at 8 p.m., we'd have a final half hour chant of I'm dissatisfied after their 20-minute dinner break. And then at the end of the day at midnight, we'd have a final 10-minute chant just before everybody leaves, just to keep people motivated for when we begin again in about 5 hours. But the key there is to just really drive home, really jackhammer the message of your company into your employees' heads at any cost. So I really recommend at least an hour and a half a day of chanting the mission of your company. Otherwise, your employees might start forgetting what the mission of the company is. And you can't have that because then people start getting ideas. Your employees get ideas, and you do not want that. Now, another thing that'll help your employees from having strokes in the office is perks. You create some office perks. That often I find just cheers employees up. Just to have that fine line of cheerfulness in the office and malaise. One perk I enjoy having in the office is a foosball table. I put a foosball table in the lobby, and I allow my employees to play about a minute a day. You'll find that foosball has a marked improvement on morale in your company. I actually enforce it. I make sure that they play for a minute a day. Otherwise, they might have a stroke, and really, that hurts morale even more if people have strokes. So just to have them playing foosball and sharing a laugh with each other, but more than a minute, and that becomes a problem. Then they're taking advantage of you. And that is the worst thing that can happen to you as an employer, is if your employees think you're weak. So that's actually another benefit of the foosball table, is that you can sort of watch your employees and be like, are you going over a minute? Are you taking advantage of me? Are you taking my kindness for a weakness? Are you trying to screw me here? And when you see that, then you can nip that right in the bud. And then you confront that employee. And make sure you make sure they don't go over a minute anymore. Another thing I have in my office, and this one's kind of fun, is cereal dispensers. In the break room, I've installed 30 different types of cereal dispensers. I've got Cheerios, I've got Frosted Flakes, I've got all sorts, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun for the employees to walk in there and be like, oh, the cereal dispenser. They feel like kids. Cereal is fun for employees. It makes them feel like children, and that's ultimately what they want in the end, is for their employer to think that they are a bunch of children who want cereal. The thing with the cereal dispenser, what you can do is you can actually take that out of the employees' paychecks. You give them the check at the end of the month, and they say, what is this cereal tax at the end? And you say, well, I'm providing you with food, and we all know food is not free. Food is not free in the world. You will be paying for this cereal, this food that I have graciously given you. This isn't a soup kitchen. This is a tech startup. And so you will be paying for this cereal. Now, another thing I provide with my employees is acupuncture. I provide it on site. An interesting thing about acupuncture, you don't need to be licensed to be an acupuncturist. You don't need any sort of certificate in order to perform acupuncture. You know, instead of just paying all this money to this professional acupuncturist, I hired my buddy Frank. This ain't rocket science. You know, you buy a couple needles, give them to Frank, and he jams them into people's arms. You're done. Suddenly, you've increased morale in your employee when you have a guy named Frank running around the office with needles. Frank will actually go around the office with his needles, and he'll come up to people and just start jamming with the needles. And the thing with Frank is that he's real quiet, so it's kind of a surprise for the employees when he sneaks up behind him and starts jamming them with needles. So it's like, for your employees, it's like a surprise, and then they're relaxed because Frank is real good with those needles. He's a needle guy. Frank has always just loved needles and sharp objects. You don't need to pay for a professional acupuncturist. Just pay some dude to walk around your office and giving people acupuncture left and right. It's mandatory for them. Mandatory once a day acupuncture. And, they're not going to know when it's coming. They're not going to know when Frank is behind them with a needle. So that's another way to prevent strokes in your office, is to have a guy with needles walking around your office, just coming at people. Bigger the needle, the better, in my opinion. A small needle, you're not going to be able to get the relaxation that a large 1 foot needle is going to provide. So the longer the needle, the better. The longer the needle, the more relaxed somebody will be. Another aspect I like to have in my office is security detail. It's sort of a fear of mine that somebody is going to break into my office and try and kill me. I don't want that to happen. So I have hired the best security, all ex-Israeli military. They are specializing in Krav Maga. They are dressed in all black, loaded with tactical gear. Balaclavas, the ski masks. I've got about 10 of them. They're roaming through the office at all hours of the day. AR-15s across the chest, locked and loaded, finger on the trigger. I think people want that idea of safety. So instead of calling them just security guards, I call them AR-15 friends because they are the friends of the employees. And with AR-15s, even though they're not really friends because the employees are not allowed to speak to the security detail, and I don't think the security detail would want to speak to the employees. Frankly, they're a little bit of a surly lot, those ex-Israeli military guys who roam the hallways of my office. Another perk I provide my employees is a thing I call pool time. At my company, I actually installed a beautiful pool on the outside at a very, very expensive cost. I put a lot of money into that pool. I'm not going to just settle for a bad pool. Paying for a pool on your office site, that's tax-free. You can take that out of your employee's paycheck. So, your employees come to you at the end of the month and they say, "What the hell is this pool tax? This is almost half my paycheck." You tell them that pool isn't going to pay for itself. Again, this is not a charity. This is a tech startup, and you will pay for this pool. Once a day, I get up on the stage and I start and I pull out this big air horn and just that lets the employees know they need to strip down into their bathing suit, which they should be wearing underneath their clothes. It's a requirement. The employees are then herded outside by the AR-15 friends, and they get to go into the pool. They will go into the pool. You better believe that water's chlorinated. I chlorinate the hell. I'm a germ guy. I don't like germs. You know, they say there's a certain requirement for how much chlorine is to be in a pool in order for it to be sanitary. I go 6 times higher. So yeah, I get all the employees into this very chlorinated pool and just have them swimming. I like watching them swim around. And an interesting side effect of this high level of chlorine is that it turns people's hair blondish, whitish. And you know, there's that old saying, blondes have more fun. So yeah, my employees are having a lot more fun because their hair has been forcibly turned blonde. Now, I don't provide maternity leave. That ain't something I do. But just because you have a baby, it doesn't mean, you know, you're supposed to, you're queen now. You're not that. So when you have a baby, instead of providing maternity leave, what I do is I have sort of a daycare center kind of thing. I don't really call it a daycare center. There's weird connotations with daycare. I don't like that term. I call it the baby chamber. It's a gray room, dark gray, and wall to ceiling gray. And the babies are put in this room, and we let the babies do what they need to do. They hang out there in the day and get to roam around in that, you know, 10 by 15 room, which is ample space for a baby. And, you know, they get the freedom to enjoy their gray room. We do kind of have a babysitter to a degree, Frank. You know, this is a great thing about to think about in companies is how can people multitask? Frank, the acupuncturist in the office, he'll occasionally come by to the baby chamber and see how they're doing. Frank will even do acupuncture in the baby chamber. We'll have the AR-15 friends bring an employee into the baby chamber, and Frank will start, giving them the needle treatment while watching the babies. The great thing about Frank is he's got a lazy eye, so he can keep one eye on the needle treatment while another eye is focused on the babies in the baby chamber, the gray room. The lazy eye thing, I mean, it's a bit disconcerting to see. I've never seen somebody with that lazy of eyes. I mean, they are basically staring off into 2 different directions. But it gets the job done. I think that really increases morale too, is mothers understanding that their babies get to see Frank perform acupuncture in front of their children. So in conclusion, the key to keeping your workplace stroke-free, just to have a fun environment where your employees can thrive. If you want to learn more about increasing morale in the workplace, check out the Business Money Hacks podcast I do with Dustin Hahn. There's a link in the description. We really go into depth about increasing morale at our companies. So check out that podcast. It's incredibly beneficial. Make sure to link and subscribe to my channel. And let's increase morale across the nation in companies all over the United States and globally. And remember, everybody stay focused.